Hey, what's up, YouTube? Marty from Team Peace and Pass. Happy spring. March is almost at the tail end of it. Hopefully, winter for your locations is getting close to an end, and we start seeing some warmer weather. I wanted to do one last market watch, obviously for the month of March before Radiant Origins, and this is also just before Ascent Los Angeles. So I wanted to start off with some of the CSR printings and hype behind that, just to give some ideas and insight into that. So you can kind of see quite a bit of these being in the hype price, right? Atlas level 2, we saw the level 3 and some of the aspect behind that, $900, Dow Chan 1,000. A lot of these have really incrementally grown in price with only one listing, so the person is kind of dictating the market with that. But if you're looking at champions overall, this is something that you wanted to just be mindful of. Allen is one of the ones that you may want to consider picking up. For $150, it's not a bad CSR just to have a copy of. If they do the treatment to Mordred, you might see this go back. You might see what happens with him. Last listing sold at 136. People trying to sell for 400. Same thing might happen here. People buy these few that are listed, and then turn around and are like, okay, now you can buy it for $400. So make sure you have your copy of that if you want to consider that for sure. Now, taking a look at a few of the other ones, out of stock completely with everything. Merlin level 2 being 800 is really interesting considering this used to be a $450 card. Last one sold at $683. Your Alice distortion package is basically around $1,400 at the moment. Realistically, they're worth about $1,300. CL has actually kind of gone up, $575, now sitting at $900. So your champion CSRs have really kind of climbed up and grown over time. So, if you have your copies and you're thinking of offloading it, now might be the time to be able to do so. Mortal Ambition CSRs are either about out or on the rise. Obviously, over time, Fluffy Shopkeep promos being able to turn these in. So you can see all of the prices have increased. Out of stock, out of stock, out of stock, $100 over almost, $200 over, $150 over, about 100. So the hype is really there for people to be able to turn these in and get their promos. Los Angeles, I believe, is the last one to be able to turn those in, and then the system will update the numbers as to how many are left. So these prices might stay just because there's going to be less of them around that exist for sure. Taking a look at Phantom Monarch in the last overview of this before we start kind of covering what Radio Origins pricing is going to be, which Radio Origins is going to be a lot to cover between the Pantheon, reprints, and the main set. But as far as Phantom Monarchs goes, you can see all the looking glasses kind of have a little bit of a hype in their pricing as far as what was bought and what people are trying to sell them for. They're kind of, unfortunately, they're pretty, but they're lackluster in that aspect of why spend a couple $100 when I'm only playing a couple copies. Maybe somebody just picks up that one. Like me, I have a Kark site just for the one of that I typically sometimes play in Merlin. Vorpal Sword sitting at 40, Palvor's at 50, Topsy Decree being the leaderboard of the super rares at 34. A little bit of a hype up there with everything, but then everything else after that kind of falls off. You can see under 20 for ticket, under 10, under 5, and then all of your super rares are under a few bucks. This is something that I typically like to see. As much as Phantom Monarch didn't do it did stuff, but it's not like this wow, because the big focus was on like Alice and Merlin, and they haven't even topped anything. But seeing a lot of your super rares be cheap and then having one or two hype, and the same thing with the ultra rares, having one ofs that you need, and then having some of the other ones be cheaper. This is what I like to see in a set, because then you don't have to sit here and buy hundreds or even close to thousands of dollars to have like a complete set. You could buy your few things that you need for your side deck, your main tech, and then everything else is just cheap. You're like, oh, I want to try Alice. Well, everything for Alice is under a few bucks. You can build the deck probably for 80 to $100 and give it a good shot. So I like to see that when it comes to Phantom Monarchs, and I think it did a good job at the price point, not so much with the meta point. Mortal Ambition Ultra Edition. Mortal Ambition, kind of lackluster as a set overall. And therefore, there's not too many of these being opened up. You can kind of see the listing points of these. Your reprints are decently priced. They're not too terrible. The hype one is Scarlet Tassel at 25 if you are a Jin fan. Then you have a couple at 17 and 14, and then everything else after that's $5, which is nice to see. Blinding Lapse is a good side deck card. Torching Reach, if you're a Diana fan, things like that. It did a good job of giving those reprints to bring down some of the prices that existed. Um, and then some of the cards, the new cards, not being overly expensive. Like all of a sudden, boof, it's a $60 card for an altar that you have to basically try to open in one card slot per pack. So I think this did a good job as well. Unfortunately, Mortal Ambition is just not a hype set. Like it was just kind of mid when it came to that. Let's talk about the Phantom Monarchs event pack real quick. So all of the alternate art foils, there's only one listing of this for 100. These are at 69. Everything else is out of stock. So I like this concept. I wish that you would be able to open them a little bit more in the pack, so that way there's more of a chance to be able to acquire them and have that. Not saying like every pack, but I think in reality, from our locals, there's only been maybe four opened. I think a Scattered Essence, a Burst Asunder, and a couple of the other guys there. But the reprint aspect did a fantastic job bringing down the prices of like Beseech to Win to a $10 copy, some good Light Weavers for four, and Snaring for two, and then everything else being cheap. I think this does a really fantastic job for players trying to get into the game and start learning to start acquiring some of the staples, and being under $1 to be able to, you open them and you're like, cool, I have this for the deck I'm trying to build. And I hope that RDO does the same thing. I really do. I really do. I think it did a really good job as well for somebody like me. I didn't have foil uncover the plots, and I was trying to foil out my Luxem package. So I think this did a good job. I wanted foils for ensnaring fumes, and I was able to acquire those without being overly expensive. So this does a good job, and I look forward to seeing what RDO event packs look like as well. Holy Carter buyout. $144 for the one listing. This is out of stock. Um, Obviously, people are feeling the hype in some fashion for the new stuff. I've seen, Seal get some tops, but this is a kind of a crazy aspect of people buying out cards, and the next couple are no better. And unfortunately, I hope you have your copies ready to go. Another hype card, Cheshire Cat, has trickled on up. It did kind of drop into that $60 range, and unfortunately, it's $85 now for copies of this. Over time, in the past year, you had this card be a $25 card. It spiked up to the 60, and it has spiked up again. So unfortunately, this card being in that $84 range for copies for this playset, 85 for this one. Um, it's a it's a card that distorted reflections with the looking glasses and going away anytime soon. Water Diana's been doing well. Fire Diana's been doing well. Merlin plays it. A lot of decks are playing this, and therefore you can see the reason why the price has been where it's at. Speaking of another $80 card and the constant hype behind it, Sadie. Overall, Sadie had that trickle down effect back in August of last year, being 30, and has just trickled its way back up. I felt like this and Carter were always in competition, and unfortunately, Carter decided to get first place. So right now, you got $90 with 29 listings, $80 with 4 listings, and then everything in between. So Sadie, another card that has just astronomically gone up in price. You already had MRC altar, and then for Carter you already had an ALC altar. So unfortunately, these cards are very expensive, and hopefully maybe we can see some form of reprint in some fashion to bring these down, so that way people have more accessibility to these cards. Not quite $80 for a liminal guide, but pretty close enough. It's trickled back on up into the $60 to $70 range for your playset copies of liminal guide. The card's not going away anytime soon. Obviously, people behind it being able to draw, get the cards, pitching, cremation, etc., etc., or even water with primordial ritual, banishing for a float and getting a draw. It's not going away. Distorted Reflections isn't getting Alter until HVN does. HVN's probably going to be towards the end of the year, which means this is going to be sometime next year. So hopefully you've had your copies of both Cheshire Cat and Liminal Guides, or you pick them up sooner than later. These cards may continue to go up in price as new sets and new cards come out. We'll definitely see what happens with this. Serious Command still sitting at about $26 to $30. Was obviously the January was around 15. It shot up, but there's plenty of listings on here for that $30 range. Seiryu is probably the best deck. It's really close depending on how you look at it with things, but Serious Command is a key crucial card in the deck, and a lot of people are playing the strategy of just getting to like 15 cards and full comboing with a Regal and an end cap and being able to do all this stuff. We're definitely going to see at least a couple Sirius top Ascent Los Angeles um, overall, and I think that but I also think that maybe Unmake Duality might get the banning just because the people have been talking about it, and obviously their aspect of how it affects a card like Grand Crusader's Ring. So you might see a little bit of that turbo super draw aspect die down and go back to like allies and a little bit more of that aspect of it. But just keep in mind, there's plenty of listings if you need to pick up your copies. Most people are playing anywhere between 2 to 4. It just depends on how you build and your ratio. So it doesn't have to be a $120 playset. You might only play 3 and pick them up for 90. Arguably, probably the second best deck that people are playing is Fractals. People are just not citing anything to deal with all of the fractals, and people are feeling that. And because of that, Zhang Jiao has climbed back up. It was $15 to $16. Now it's sitting in the 30 to 35 range. Another card from Abyssal Heaven, so eventually an altar reprint will come out. But if you need your copies, they're sitting at about 30 to 35 a piece. So if you're planning on playing Fractals for the new format, make sure you have your copies ready, because this also might become a $50, $60 card at some point. Um, if not, we'll see what happens. Backup chargers sitting at about $40. We've seen the triple climb from 20, basically doubling in price. You see all the listings between 40 to 50. It's the essential staple that people are playing. You should be able to turbocharge and draw additional cards. You have Tengu, you have the Scepter for Merlin, you have a lot of the other ones, but this is the one that everyone's been always going to because of the fact that you can play turbocharge, and you see the price go back up to that $40 price point. If you're thinking about picking up Fracturize, my word of advice is wait. This card's getting reprinted in a couple weeks. We're going to see a lot of copies around, and right now spending $22 per copy just seemed astronomically insane, and I don't think you should. I think this card's going to drop down to a $10, 10 to 15 range, and I think that'd be much more beneficial for you to wait and see what happens with that. But if you really have to have them, I guess buy them, but I would hold off. A little bit of a cool down. Innervate Agility from FTC. They were at one point about an $8 card, $7.50. Kind of trickled back down into that $5 to $6 range. Core TCG has plenty of them if you need it, um, but it's being utilized in a lot of various decks. Seiryu, Tristan, things like that. So if you want to pick up your copies, make sure you have them ready to go. But that's not too bad for a rare from an old set. Staggering Strike's an interesting one that has kind of trickled back down in price as well. It was sitting in that 750 range for a rare. Now you have plenty of copies around $5. That's not bad to see on a rare, on something that's actually like meta relevant. This is really cited a lot to remove preps for like Tristan and even Xander and things like that. Plus, giving True Sight makes a big difference on that. So, just a little recap on the Mortal Ambition copy. The altar kind of brought the price down a little bit, which is nice to see. Conniving Plans is something that is going up in price. We've seen a couple cards with, I forget the name of it, but it's a pay 2 Deluge. If you think of it, you have 10, you can deal 7 to a unit. So a lot of this, with Conniving Plans being a rare, it's about $5, which again isn't terrible, but over time it was only $1. Now you can kind of see the hype of the watermill aspect and people, getting their copies ready. Maybe they didn't get the Merlin one that they wanted from the rewards, and so they're picking up these copies. So you've seen this steady little increase in this card. Just be mindful, or if you want to unload, you have a bunch of them and you want to unload a good playset for $4 or multiple playsets, you can definitely do so. This is something that I like to see for Frostborn Paladin, having a decline to where it was, at one point it was $12, and now on average it was sitting at about 8. We've seen that die down. You have a few copies at 5. You have most of them at 7. This is going to die a little bit harder in a couple weeks because we get your copies in Mordred. I think it's a great thing. This is a staple in water decks, and it's really nice to be able to see not so much hype behind it. So good job on the reprint portion and getting that available for everybody in Mordred Recollection. And as always, the last part of the video is just covering the Divine Relics, Mercurial Heart, $5 and $8. Taking a look, actually, I wanted to see what, in covering this, what foils look like So the one from Mercurial Heart Altar is $100. You can pick up a foil for 25. As far as Mercurial Heart, if you're one of those people, I like having a foil of the Divine Relics. I think it's really neat. So if you want to pick up your copy, $25 ain't too bad for a foil copy of Mercurial Heart. Temporal spectrometer sitting at about 8 to 10 bucks. On that, obviously, it's the same thing as Mercurial Heart. It's not really utilized that much. As far as a foil copy goes, you can pick up the Ultra copy, which I think is the better looking one, for $80, um, which isn't terrible for a foil, considering it's a Divine Relic Ultra Rare foil. So, covering temporal spectrometer, very cost efficient. It might see play in Pantheon. Who knows? Being able to put the buffs and people not interacting with it probably too much in Pantheon because the destruction aspect of things is only one ofs. That's something you want to keep in mind. Imperial Seal, the Altar Edition is 22. The original one's 17. Frankly, I like the full art version a lot better. Behind that price point, but taking a look at the foils, you have $380. It hasn't sold as far as the foil printing, so if you have one and you want to move it, you can definitely get a little bit of money, maybe listed at 250 to 300. Make some little extra bank on that being a nice foil, and kind of just going from there with it. Art of War sitting at about $30 a copy. I haven't seen many people side deck or do anything with this. Allies are not a really strong thing right now. So overall, just your mind thought on that. But as far as a foil edition goes, you can pick one up for $350 if you choose to do so. We'll see, obviously, the Altar edition come probably towards the end of the year. Hopefully, that will bring some of those other aspects and bring some of the pricing down on this, maybe as people want to offload and just pick up one of the alternative copies for that. Grand Crusader's Ring has died down, which is nice to see. $25. When I used to play, started playing, it was around this price point. It went up to $50, $60, $70. It's nice to kind of see that. As far as foils go, they're sitting at about $250 and I guess and $4 for the first edition, but $250 is not a terrible price point for the foil. If we see Unmake Duality die off, people are probably going to consider playing this again, and having a 250 copy for a Divine Relic isn't too bad of a choice to decide on that. Quicksilver Gale also kind of calming down in that price point, being there's one listing here for $38, and then after that it's $50. Now, with all of these, keep in mind that you're competing for a reprint slot and an ultra rare 1 of 4 slot. So getting one of these might also be harder, just like Grand Crusader's Ring, Looking Glass, and Lost Providence. So just keep that in mind when you're opening RDO and the packs. It might be something you want to consider picking up this $38 copy just to have it ready to go and kind of just going from there with things. As far as the foil goes, it's the Quicksilver one, which is people are selling them at $1,000. Lost Providence is sitting at $145 for the regular. There are no listings currently for foils, so $150 is basically the price point of that. The last foils sold for $600 a piece, and then all of them have been basically $600 as far as the sales go. Again, another one that can get reprinted, and you have an opportunity to open it. So just be mindful of that you might be able to snag copies for $100 or less if people are selling them at that price. And the very last one is the Looking Glass. Looking Glass is sitting at about $160 to $180. There are 2 foil listings currently for $600 if you want to pick up the copy. This is the 4th Divine Relic that is getting a reprint, so be mindful of that. But that's your price points for everything. Happy spring. Good luck at Ascent Los Angeles. This is Marty from Team Peace and Pass. Like, comment, and subscribe. Peace out, guys. Thanks.